Hey folks, we're here in the backyard gardens at the Meadow House, and if you recall, 6 months ago, these didn't even exist. We put these in back in September, October. Actually, we started in May and June, and we finished them off in October. And during that time, we planted 4,000 tulips. And I thought I'd take you through a tulip tour today through the Meadow House Gardens. They're not quite at peak tulip, especially where Saunders filming right now. You could see there's a lot of opening buds or still closed buds. And we planted over 100 different cultivars and species in these gardens, and really only in largely 2.5 beds. So I figured I'd take you through some of the cultivars. I'm not going to remember all of them off the top of my head because a lot of them are very nuanced in color, but I could actually point out a few that I know and maybe throw up some more on the screen as we go through if I don't know them offhand. I will say that some of these varieties that are coming up, I thought they were going to be a little redder, but these are kind of in the species of Tulipa acuminata. This is a specific cultivar though, but it has that flame coming up, which I think is really beautiful. And then we have these white with buttery yellow, and this could be maybe one of 3 different varieties. So we have that one who's that Netherlands guy, Pim Fortuyn, the one who had been assassinated. There was a tulip named after him. It could be Orleans, or it could be Paybas, P-A-Y-B-A-S. So that was some of the white and yellow ones that I had gotten. So some of those are pretty nuanced, like I say, because the colors are very similar to one another. Just to point out some of the small ones, but not to be overlooked, this is a true variegated tulip, and this is Tulipa tarda, but the cultivar name is Interaction. And you can see that it has these white, pink, and green leaves. Honestly, I think this would be a great tulip for planters. And actually, that's one thing that hasn't come up yet are some of my tulips that are in planters, so I could point some of those out to you as well. There's another small one over here. So again, some of those are nice in the bed, but they could also be really great in their own planters because they're so small. And the muscari and the hyacinths are kind of slowly passing away as the tulips kind of take shape. Now, there's some colors in here that I don't know how they got in, because I tried to pick tulips that are in the reds, purples, a little bit of yellow, and a splash of white. But we have one that's this coral color. So I'm not quite sure. There's a couple that jumped in here that I'm like, what is that doing in here? But you know what? Some of the pink magenta colors transition to purple as they age. So I could have got thrown off. I mean, a lot of the tulips are called purple, blue, this or that, and I find them to be more pink or purple depending on, you know, what light you're looking in. Now this is one of it's called flaming tulips. So you can see on the inside there's that dark flame, and I think we have flaming flag and flaming prince and one more that I can't think of right now. Now I will have to say that some of my favorite ones are the lily flowering tulips. And so you'll see like this shape, there's actually probably better representations, but It has this more elegant kind of vase shape. It puckers in the middle and then kind of goes outwards. I'm not sure which one this is, but we have a lot of Sarah Raven that I'll point out that I think is my favorite. And then we have these that are kind of purple with like white edges. And this may be cyanide blue. You can see that when they call them blue tulips, I think they look more purple, to be honest. This fringy one right here is, I think this one is called Sunny Leo. And then this one right next to Sonder is one that, you know, maybe wasn't appropriate for this one, but it was a true Rembrandt tulip, and it's called Grand Perfection. So you can see some of the lily flowering tulips here. You can see just I think slightly more elegant. They're not quite bullet shaped like this, which is stubbier. But these, I think, which have the tips that come up and they're like pinched at the top, I think they're really pretty. And this one is probably Tulip Sarah Raven. It's a really dark velvety red. Here's some more colors that are like that kind of flaming flag. This one has just it looks like sherbet. Yellows and pinks and lilacs and purples, really gorgeous. And then I also have some double flowering tulips. This one's a little past the prime, but I have like Palmyra, Backpacker, there's Roadster, a few others. This beautiful red velvet lily flowering tulip, at least it looks like a lily flowering-esque. And then I'll show you a bit more of these, but those are called Yume no Murasaki, which from Japanese to English translates into Purple Dream. So you might find those named like Purple Dream as well as Yume no Murasaki. And I have to show you this. This is not a tulip tour, but this is, look at this little narcissus. It's so tiny. It's like a minute one. I'm not even sure why I planted it there because I think it'll get lost in this garden. But I also have some little white ones. And then these little daffodils as well, which have these kind of fancy inner cups and like really small petals on the outside. And we have some yellow ones that are similar to that there. This garden, I took basic measurements of this long part of the garden, and you'll notice as we approach, I didn't quite finish it all the way down because you plant tulips in the fall, and by the time the fall came around, that area back there was full of nettles, which is our little nettle supply, which I don't want to get rid of. I really like nettles. In fact, I'm thinking of making like nettle soup this coming week. It's a perfect time to actually collect some. And also hemp dogbane. There's a big amount of it there. And the best time to actually probably finish this bed is this spring. So I'll take you back there. I don't want to pass by too many of the tulips, but I just want to show you this, that when I did the math for this, I suspected that we should have 4,000 tulips. And it probably would have worked if I continued this all the way down, and you'll see that I did plant some more tulips around here, but they're not coming up as much because it's shaded. So it probably won't, and I didn't plant that much around here anyway, because you could see the bed ends basically here, and Sonder, put in the edging. So what I did was I said, you know what? Well, I might as well toss them into this bed. And you could probably see now, because most of them are out in this bed, because I guess this bed gets a lot of good sun, that I had a color pattern here. So I went with these really light lavenders. I think this is called Tulip Silver Cloud. I also have ones called Tulip Silver Stone and a number of others that have this really beautiful pale lilac color with this peach on the inside. And then I kind of transitioned into more purples, and then purpley reds, and then deep reds in the middle. I have some gaps in the garden because that's where I'm going to be putting some more bushes and trees as well. So it's part of the reason why I don't have a bunch right here. I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot knowing that I wanted to plant in the garden. Now I'm not sure how many of these are going to naturalize. Tulips have been overbred so much that not all the tulips tend to naturalize. Let me show you some new ones in here. So I think these are parrot tulips. So you can see they have fringy, actually I planted a lot of fringy varieties and I don't see them quite up yet. Now these are the lily flowering tulips. I believe this is the Sarah Raven. So you can see if I had to choose which ones I'd like to naturalize, probably this one would be one of my first top picks. Then I have some of these red ones. It could be one of two varieties. There's so many different ones. And like I said, a lot of these double flowering tulips, so you can see that they look almost like peonies, or they're sometimes called peony flowering tulips. I have a number of them. Roadster, Palmyra was a big one that I planted in here, and quite a few others. I have seen some really pretty red purple ones that I'd like to show you. Let me see. Yeah, like that one might be a Negrita. This one in here, these really dark purple ones. And then they're kept red, but then they have this waxy like bloom. And what I mean by bloom is like kind of the bloom that you would see on the outside of an egg. I think that's really attractive, especially when the sun hits it. And then you could see that there is quite a lot of these Yume no Murasaki, and they have these white centers, really beautiful tips. And they even have this kind of yellowish white on the bottom. And then you can see that this is a very similar color, right? But it has a completely different shape to the tulip. And this could be a purple triumph tulip. I'm not sure. You know what? I think I would really only know what they are if I have them labeled and I just, plant them like a flower farm would, where they plant them in rows. But I really wanted to make it a bit more naturalistic. Now here's a completely different one. Very similar color to the Sarah Ravens, but you can see that this has a completely different shape to the flower head. This might be one of the crown tulips. So it's shaped, when it opens, it actually looks more like a crown. So it's kind of not quite a double tulip or a peony flowering tulip, but as it opens up, it kind of looks all crinkly and crown-like. Because of the colors going red to purples, I could see a lot of these purple ones. A lot of the purple tulips have not come up yet, and then you'll see some lavenders, and I'm assuming, again, that's like silver cloud. I also have some Prince-style tulips that are that color too, but I really, really love those lilac shades. There's one more that I'd like to show you over here that I think is the one that I really liked. It's called George Grappe. Oh, these were some of the first ones that emerged. So you could see that these tall, and they actually emerged really pink, and you could see they're now fading into that darker color. I'll have to get you the names of this one, but I think this was one of the first ones that emerged. Here's another color that I'm like, how did you get in here? It's kind of like this orangish, like fire orange red. So I'm thinking that maybe somebody slipped a tulip in there that wasn't of the same variety. And then I will point out some of these as well that have, like, again, this flaming Rembrandt color. Gorgeous. And this is very chocolatey. And this is our woodland tulip. This is Tulipa sylvestris. This actually did not appear very much in the last 2 years in our bulb lawn. Not like the first 2 years, which is sad because it became one of my favorite tulips in the bulb lawn. So, we'll see. Here's another beautiful purple one that is right here. That's just starting to open up. And you can see that we also have Fritillaria meleagris in here, and they are just starting to expire. In fact, maybe this one is a better version. So we might as well show you some of the narcissus. I'll probably remove some of those yellow ones that have gotten into there. I can't remember if I planted them because they were like free, but I only wanted to plant white in here. And there's still quite a lot of plants that need to go into this space, which is why you see, so many holes in the bed. But yeah, this is some of our white thalias, I believe that they are. Narcissus thalia. So my idea was to have some of these bulbs in here as the perennials start to fill in. So you could see that I do have some of the perennials coming out, but it was gonna take a lot of plants to establish in these beds, as you can imagine, because we put in 6 of these beds and they are really big. And I wasn't sure how this experiment with the tulips was going to go, but I'm actually quite pleased with it. This is a little chaotic for me, but sometimes you have to push yourself in a way, in a direction that you don't think you would like. It's hard not to love flowers, even in whatever composition that you put them in. And this was a lot more colorful than I expected, even though I was trying to pick reds, purples, whites, and yellows. There's so many different colors on the spectrum that it comes out to be like a medley of color, like a rainbow of color. Today, I'm also going to be fertilizing some of these. Now, if I could have got out here maybe 3 days earlier before more of these were blooming, it'd probably be best. But what I'm gonna do is just lightly put in fertilizer. I'm not gonna cast it because I don't wanna get the fertilizer on the flowers or on the leaves. I'm just going to go through and lightly put around because I know some of our perennials are coming in and I wanna give the bulbs a really healthy start for those of ones who are still yet to bloom. And then if it's going to rain in the later evening or later in the day, then that's great, but I would recommend just watering it in after that. And we're gonna continue to plant out some of these gardens throughout the remainder of the year, but I also wanna give the perennials like this is our liatris coming up. Grass comes out, the liatris goes in. But this is some of our liatris coming up and they will fill out. So this is more liatris spicata. And then over here is some of our native anemones coming up. And I am planting a lot of perennials to spread. That's kind of what we...
So is that kind of like the shade garden?
Yeah, the shade garden actually has some of our native anemones in it as well.
That spread out really nice.
Yes.
Filled up the bed.
That's the idea, is to kind of make this whole bed, you won't see any of this is my idea. Like the bed will just kind of tumble over to the sides. Now this is Deschampsia goldtau. So this is one of our shade-loving grasses and it's getting quite a bit of sun now. But my plan is, I have a lot of these trees planted in here and they're still small, but eventually they'll get quite large and they'll start to cast some shade over these grasses. So I kind of planted in the grasses knowing that they could handle a little bit of sun, but they'd be happier in partial shade. And some of these tulips, they could come out during the early part of the year when a lot of these deciduous trees are just starting to leaf out. And I'll continue to come out here over the next couple days because I'm sure there's more that will emerge. And I'll be sure to show you, especially the evolution of this garden. And then we'll see next year which of these tulips will happen to come back, because some of them I'm sure will perennialize, but I don't know how many will actually perennialize. So that will be really interesting to see. Let me know what your favorites were that you saw in the garden, or if you have grown any of these in your garden, that would be great to know. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. Look at the chickadee looking in there. He wants to know what's in there. He needs a box.